Hello and welcome to the oddschecker betting show sponsored by 888 Sport. This is the Cheltenham Festival Ante-Post preview. I'm your host, George Elek, and today I am joined by oddschecker tipster Andy Holding, racing journalist and broadcaster Ed Quigley, and 888 Sport ambassador Barry Geraghty. Stay tuned to hear which horse novice hurdle specialist Andy Holding thinks is the good thing for the Supreme.
Yeah, I feel as though I'm a little bit of a fraud here, coming in piggybacking off the back of Barry Geraghty's astonishing foresight with this horse.
Ed has a 10-1 fancy in the mare's hurdle that he thinks could go off favourite.
It's a massive price still at double figures. I'm shocked, to be honest with you.
And Barry has a strong fancy in the National Hunt Chase and tells us which horse he thinks is the one to beat in the Gold Cup.
I got the impression from the time I was down there that he's a horse who may have just improved a little bit over the summer. I think physically he might be a stronger horse.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that we all maybe need something to look forward to. It is the 16th of December, the time we're recording, and things aren't necessarily where we want them to be at this stage. Fingers crossed we all get to Christmas. But Barry, it's a good time, I guess, isn't it, to look ahead at the Cheltenham Festival, which is now on the horizon, and we're starting to see some of the protagonists racing and showing us what they're made of this season.
Oh, definitely. So we've been gearing towards this since October, or even since Cheltenham last year. So it's all roads to Cheltenham. But yeah, there's plenty of big names coming out and staking their claim, and it's a big weekend. The Long Walk Hurdle is, I don't remember it ever being as strong.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to look at some of the horses racing at Ascot and elsewhere this weekend, but we're going to do so by going through your guys' picks, your Ante-Post picks for the Cheltenham Festival. And Andy, I know you're a fan of looking ahead at these races and getting some value at Ante-Post. What are the pitfalls? What are the traps here? And how can you go about making sure that you've got a decent book of bets going into the festival before we even get to the week of it?
Well, there's several golden rules at this stage of the season. I think you have to be very cautious with certain areas, such as the novices, because we know all too well that Willie, Gordon, Henry have still got to play their hand in several departments, particularly over the Christmas period. I'm sure they'll have their good novices out that they haven't run already. They get a chance to flex their muscles, the ones that have already had a run, to see how good they are, see whether they can take graded level rather than just win maiden hurdles and novice and beginners chases, etc. Same applies over this side of the water, but more predominantly over in Ireland. I think there's been a lot of shadow boxing at the moment. There hasn't been anything outrageous on the time figures other than the odd one or two, particularly from the novices. So I'm waiting for it to catch fire, really, to be perfectly honest. What I've looked at with regards to my list is confirmed time figure horses that are the leaders of their particular group going into the second half of the season. So, there might be a few that will usurp them and go over the top of them, or certainly go alongside them. At this very moment in time, they all run the fastest times in the categories I'm going to choose, particularly the novice hurdles. So that's what I've done. Not massive amount of value, other than perhaps one. I think predominantly when you were looking at Ante-Post bets, I know Ed's the master of this. Really, most of his are sort of 10-1 or above. He's looking for horses that are likely to shorten rather than they're plenty tight enough already. So I can see his angle. But me predominantly, I've mixed and match a few ones that I think are already well established and are almost certain to get there, and a few other sort of ones from left field.
And Ed Quigley, someone who loves Cheltenham so much, he moved there. How are you feeling? How are you feeling? When are the Twitter hashtags going to start in terms of your run up to Cheltenham?
Yeah, I know I'm a bit late with the not long now, aren't I? I mean, yeah, we're 12 weeks, 5 days, something like that off the top of my head. Not that I'm counting or anything, but yeah, it'll soon be here, won't it? Won't it, George? Yeah, it's starting to bubble up nicely. A whole plethora of top class action. It's a bit of a who's who over the next kind of fortnight with all the superstars coming out. Obviously, Kempton, all the action in Ireland, and obviously this weekend at Ascot as well. So there's going to be a few reputations burst, shall we say, or enhanced for that matter. And no, interesting Andy's point. Yeah, the angle I'm coming through perhaps slightly different is looking at those which I think are sleepers in the market. And I think half the battle these days, especially with the Cheltenham markets, is mainly I say it's just getting the right target. I know it sounds a bit silly and almost a layman's term, but the waters are so muddy these days with the, since the Turner's Chase came in, in the olden days, it's very easy to work out whether it's an Arkle horse or a Sun Alliance horse, if you like, but that kind of middle ground can trip up punters. And so it's very much a case of staying clear of some of those booby traps and getting the horse to the right race is half the battle. And so I aim to go down that route and then find ones which I think could start half the price they are at present. So yeah, they're so interesting. Lots of different angles in here, and some really interesting horses to talk about in this show.
Half the price. That's a big promise, Ed. I'm going to hold you to that. But let's get into the oddschecker betting show, Cheltenham Ante-Post preview, sponsored by 888 Sport. And before we do, just going to point the listener and the viewer, as ever, in the direction of the oddschecker app. There you'll find the best prices, which we'll be talking in terms of today, place terms, bookie offers, free bets. And of course, if you download the app, you'll get Andy's tips straight to your phone every morning of racing as well. So do download it now and you can follow along as we go through them. And the way we've done this is I've asked you guys for 5 tips each, Andy and Ed, and Barry's given us 3 as well. A couple of the big races, the Champion Chase, the Champion Hurdle and the Gold Cup, were not covered in the tips. So we're going to cover those as well. So plenty to get through, and we're going to go through it in chronological order as well. So as I said, we won't be touching on every race, but as the tips come in, we'll be starting from the beginning. And of course, the first race of the Cheltenham Festival is the Supreme Novice Hurdle. And here we have John Bon, who we'll see on Saturday at Ascot, is the 7-2 favourite, ahead of Constitution Hill at 4-1. Dysart Dynamo 10-1, Sir Gerhard 10-1, Kilcroot 12-1, Largy Debut 14-1, 18-1 bar. It is the main man, Andy Holding, who has the fancy here. And it is a horse that we spoke about for about 15 minutes on the oddschecker betting show last week, and the Constitution Hill.
Yeah, I feel as though I'm a little bit of a fraud here. Coming in, piggybacking off the back of Barry Geraghty's astonishing foresight with this horse prior to his Sandown victory. But we all heard the vibes that Barry gave out, and he backed it up on the track. Now, obviously, Barry was very much going on what he'd heard and what he'd seen with his own eyes, whereas I've got the information from here on in of having some sort of tangible evidence on the clock. So far, up to now, he's run by far and away the fastest time figure for any horse either side of the RSC over 2 miles. Yes, I certainly take on board a lot of the Irish races probably haven't been that well contested or strongly run yet, so there's going to be 1 or 2 improvers. But as it stands, this fella just stands out for me. He's certainly a much better horse anyway on the clock so far than John Bon. Now, obviously, John Bon has got a chance to enhance what he's already done as we speak tomorrow in what looks a good version of the Kennelgate Novices Hurdle. If he wins it well and knocks out a good number, then this conversation could be rather different. But as it stands, for me, Constitution Hill just looks a much more quicker model. We were all impressed with the way he did it at Sandown. He jumped immaculately. And when Nico pressed the button at the last, he absolutely flew away from a very good horse, Might. I think the Harry Fry camp literally couldn't get their breath. I think they're still in a state of shock. I think if you go around that yard, that 1 or 2 of the people closely associated with that horse are probably still in a daze. Such was the sort of bashing that he got given out by Constitution Hill. But his sectionals are great as well. I mean, all the way around the track, he was quicker than the handicap at the back end of the card, which is always a good sign for me. He was good from the last in the back straight. He was good from 2 out to the line, and from the line to the last, he was by miles. He was the quickest on the card, and he did it good. It geared down as far as I could see it. I mean, he could have gone even quicker. So, I think this is probably the most exciting horse I've seen so far this season. Barry's absolutely bang on. Like I say, 40-1 up front before I even got involved. I feel like I feel as I'm a bit of a Johnny come lately here, typically 4-1. But what I'm trying to say is, at least I've got an objective view now to know how good he is. And for those that like to follow established horses with fast times that are almost certain to get there, barring accidents, I think Nicky will give him one more run. I can only see him going one way in the market. I'd be surprised if anything runs as well as fast a time as he's already done going into the festival off the back of that just that run.
I don't want to be greedy here, Barry, because you've already given us so much in terms of letting us know about Constitution Hill before that run a couple of weeks ago. But do you have any indication? Nicky Henderson clearly holds the aces at this early stage in the Supreme with John Bon as well. Is there any indication of how they're thought of comparatively at home?
No, not really. Only just that both horses. He's raving about both horses really. But Constitution Hill, I suppose I knew all I knew before he went over the 7 Barrows, and then the vibes are good, which backed up what I thought. But I'm really interested to hear Andy's, because everything I know about Constitution Hill is what I felt myself from riding them and the impression I was getting. But when it's backed up by the clock, it's good to hear as well, because visually it was a brilliant performance. But when you have Andy, dissecting it by the clock the way he's just done, it backs up, and I suppose it'll give you more belief in the horse, if you like. And fingers crossed for him. But I think maybe the Talwart could be his next stepping stone, maybe.
Ed, it falls to either myself or you then to play devil's advocate, and with a 40 to 1 Ante-Post ticket in my pocket, that's not going to be me. So I'll leave it to you to make a case against him.
No, I absolutely love this horse on what I've seen. Yeah, again, it's just not my nature now at the prices to get involved in. The Tolworth, I think Nicky Henderson has pretty much kind of penciled that one in, where he'll meet Jamie Snowden's winner. That's right, Gino, who won it the weekend. So that should be a good little battle. But yeah, look, I mean, it was a fantastic performance. Again, the kind of cat's out the bag now, isn't it? It doesn't get my kind of juices flowing. I mean, if he bolts up in the Tolworth, depending on what John Bond does, I mean, what's he maybe going to go 9-4, 5-2? It's still, as you say, the 3.5 months to go. I'd probably, at the price he's now, probably wait and back him on the day, if that makes sense. But that's nothing against the horse himself. I mean, he looks a machine on that one run, as Andy says. The kind of clock backs it up, and yeah, I mean, funny enough, I'll be interested in what Andy says on the time figures very quickly on the kind of the third string, if you want to call it. I Am Maximus. There was a lot of talk after what he did at Newbury, and a lot of people saying, oh, perhaps he should go up and trip and everything. I'm not so sure. He was very keen early doors. And then when Nico asked him to go and quicken from the back of the last, I mean, he put 7 lengths on them in a matter of 100 yards. I'd love to see him in a strongly run, something like the Betfair Hurdle in February, in a strongly run 2 miles where you could get a lead and something could tow him along. They couldn't go quick enough for him in the first half of the race. I mean, he's kind of 20 to 1. Whether they think he'd time he'll move up into more of a kind of Ballymore type, I don't know. But what is for sure is Nicky Henderson definitely at present has an embarrassment of riches in this kind of division.
Yeah, Andy, have you got the time figure for our Maximus?
Yeah, I mean, the overall time is nowhere near as good as Constitution Hill, which is to be expected. I said I don't think there's going to be any novices over this side of the Irish. They're going to be running as quick as that in the build-up to Cheltenham. Put it this way, Constitution Hill ran a quicker time in that Sandown Maiden than Appreciate It did in winning. I think it was the Grade 1 at Leopardstown last year. We got 71 for Appreciate It in winning the Grade 1. We got 72 for Constitution Hill winning the Maiden here and hurdle geared down. His back end sectionals are quite good, Maximus. He was very good from the last in the back straight to the line in comparison to Pull Again Green, that the horse that won the 2.5 mile race. But that was a very slowly run race. Like I say, it's a little bit of a misleading link, if anything. I just think Maximus overall form falls short for me. His Exeter race hasn't really worked out well. I thought he was okay yesterday, rather being spectacular. I think he's got a way to go to catch John Bond and Constitution Hill.
We'll move on now because this podcast and video is sponsored by 888 Sport and not Constitution Hill. People might be getting a bit confused at the moment. But before we do, just want to point out to those who do want to get involved, 888 Sport have boosted 5 of the guys' picks to either best price in the market or standout best price. And Constitution Hill has been boosted from 7-2 to 4-1. T's and C's here, of course, to apply. It's a max bet over £20 and over 18s only. And please do gamble responsibly. Those T's and C's do apply to all of the boosts as well, and the rest too. And you'll be able to find the link in the 888 specials part as well. You can find that link below in the description to the video and the podcast as well. So boosted there, Constitution Hill matching best price in the market 4-1 with 888 Sport. On then to the Arkle now, where a couple of you are going head to head here. Appreciate It is the 5-2 favourite. Fernie Hollow is 4-1. Edward Stone 10-1. Riviere de Tel 12-1. Bob Ollinger 14-1. Sure Not to Run. You would have thought. My Drogo 16-1. Blue Lord 16-1. 25-1 and 20-1. Bar and Barry, your first selection comes here in the shape of Blue Lord at 16-1.
Yeah, so he obviously won in Farias recently. jumped brilliantly. That was obviously one real positive to take out of it. But settled much better. Far more relaxed. I think maybe fences were a help, but I'd say maturity is probably most of it, really. He was a buzzy horse last year, didn't help his cause a lot of times. They had to drop him in further than ideal. Now, Willie was adamant about staying at 2 mile last season, so I would get the impression with how he jumped in Ferias the last day. And that inside track is a sharp track. It's very much a speed track. So I'd say he's going to stick to 2 mile, would be my reading of it. But he would have been second in the Supreme last year had he not fallen at the last. I think the way he jumps and the way he's settling would offer improvement in him. Appreciated had entries already, and we haven't seen him out yet. So maybe we're a bit premature to get concerned there, but he had entries a few weeks ago. He hasn't had a run. Fernie Hollow didn't excite me with how he jumped. I know he'd improve for the run. He was better in the second half of the race, but I think when he gets into better company and going harder, when he's not getting it as easy, if he lined up with Riviere to Tell over Christmas, it could be fun. So I don't think he's going to be a straightforward. Blue Lord for me just looked very natural, and like that the race will cut up to a degree. But I think at 16-1 he's massive each way value.
16-1 massive each way value there for Barry, and there's one in here that you fancy also the other side of the Irish Sea, Andy, but for Gordon Elliott stable.
Yeah, mine comes with a bit of an either or attached to it. I'm not 100% sure what route connections are thinking with regards to Riviere d'Etel. Barry's already mentioned him in dispatches there up against Fernie Hollow over Christmas, if that is going to be the case. If she were to win that race over Christmas and get the better of Fernie Hill, I think their arm might be twisted and that they might have to go down the Arkle route, because up to now she's been the standout performer on the clock so far in on, and not only this season, but her number last time out when she won at Navan would have won every running of the Arkle for the last decade. That's how fast she was.
Wow.
I mean, it was absolutely a complete and utterly eye-popping performance. Because I've got the data going back for at least 10, 15 years since I've been doing numbers and keeping them. And her figure that day was just astonishing. Her jumping was spectacular. She was unrelenting. You know, she had a decent horses, strung out all over County Meath that day. And, she's done it 3 times now, not just once. All her time figures have been exceptional. So it'll take a hell of a good performance by something to lower her colours. Fernie Hollow clocked a good number when he won, but so nowhere near as good as Riviere d'Etel. And there's obviously 1 or 2 horses like Blue Lord that have done very good times or more than adequate times. But they would certainly have to improve to get close to Riviere d'Etel, who clearly can rip over 2 miles. The mare's race is another alternative. That would be relatively easy pickings in comparison to the Arkle category, which is yet, of course, to see even appreciate Let Rip yet. We don't know what he can do. So it's building up already at the moment, the Arkle, into a fantastic kind of clash between a lot of good Irish horses and maybe the likes of Edwardstone. We shouldn't forget about him either. And Concertista was quite good the other day if you wanted to chuck her into this category. So, we're certainly not struggling for good 2 milers, but as I said, Riviere d'Etel's time figure, absolutely extraordinary. And at 12-1, there's no way she's a 12-1 shot based on the numbers that I've got.
Yeah, Riviere d'Etel 12-1 best price. Andy, do you think there might also be a chance? We haven't seen Appreciate It yet. There were talks, before that scintillating win at Cheltenham in the festival last year that the 2 miles was too sharp. Is there any chance? His 2 entries at the moment on Boxing Day over 2 mile 1 and 2 mile 3. Is there any chance we'll see Appreciate It step up and trip?
Well, yeah, I mean, I fell into that same trap, didn't I, last year, George, when we had a conversation about Appreciate It. I thought for all the world, after he won his Cork Maiden, he'd be stepping up to 2.5, but he just showed so much tactical speed over the 2. He won his 2 Cheltenham trials very, very comfortably, and his numbers suggested he got plenty of boot for 2 miles. So I do think you need a little bit of everything, don't you? Barry will know. He's ridden horses that have won the Arkle that have stayed further in the future. We've seen Gold Cup winners win the Arkle, so you do need a horse that's got 2.5 mile stamina as well as 2 mile pace. I'm pretty sure that's what Appreciate It has got in spades. So with Bob Ollinger lurking around in that sort of category, the 2.5 mile category. A lot depends on what connections think, but yeah, at this stage, they'll start off at 2 and then they'll let the horse tell them whether that's the right trip or not.
2 against the field either way there for the Arkle. Then 1 for Barry in Blue Lord, 16-1 best price, and Riviere de Tel for Andy at 12-1. No selections in the Champion Hurdle, but we'll give it a courtesy mention either way. Can't let the Champion Hurdle go unpreviewed. And Honeysuckle is, of course, the 4-5 favourite. Charger 10-1, Epatante 14-1, Fernie Hollow 14-1, Appreciate It 16-1, Echoes and Rain 25-1. And Ed, I think we're riding you to sleep here. We had you with your paper out in a second, so I'm going to come to you in a second.
That's fine.
I'm going to come to you in a second to find us some each way value against the Fav. But Barry, when it comes to Honeysuckle, is there any that 4-5 at the moment may look short enough 3 months out from the festival, but on the day, all being well, you can see her being a lot shorter.
Yeah, and she, on what she's done, she deserved to be. And she improved for me. Her jumping was at her best in Cheltenham. She didn't jump brilliantly in the Hatton's Grace. I think she improves with her racing. But I couldn't believe, and a bit like Andy on Appreciate It, I was in a similar camp. I thought he needed further. I thought Honeysuckle in a Champion Hurdle, I wasn't convinced she was sharp enough. I didn't think her jumping was quick enough, but she got it all together on the day, and she was electric. She was head and shoulders above the opposition, and I don't see any reason why it'll be any different unless something happens untoward her in the meantime.
Ed, anything for us to take her on with?
No, absolutely not. No, I think we're clutching at straws, aren't we, really? Things can go wrong, etc. And there's still a bit of water under the bridge. She looks a class apart, and we're struggling for depth here, aren't we, really? I mean, Charger will probably run into a place, as always, the one. If there was one who I think we're yet to see the best of this season and can improve on what we saw, that would be Echoes in Rain, who was fiercely keen on a seasonal reappearance. I mean, she pulled the jockey's arms out for 1.5 miles. I like to see her in a bigger field where she could settle. I'm not saying she's going to get anywhere near Honeysuckle, but put it this way, it wouldn't shock me if we had 3 mares fill the first 3 places in the Champion Hurdle with her, Epatante, and all both chasing the shadow of Honeysuckle, really. I think there's not much strength in depth. Honeysuckle, she's got to stay fit to win. And yeah, Echoes in Rain, I could kind of see her improving, which she needs to improve on what she's done, but I have the feeling we're yet to see the best of her this season. So an improved display over Christmas wouldn't be a shock.
An improved display would be needed, but Honeysuckle clearly the popular choice here. And we'll move on to the Mares Hurdle. And Ed, you've got a selection here. I'll quickly run through the market and you can tell us which one is the one that you fancy. With She Wears It Well, the 8-1 favourite, Concertista 10-1, Tell Me Something Girl also 10-1, alongside Stormy Island and Epatante. L'Autonomie is 12-1, Gauloise 14-1, Echoes and Rain just mentioned there for the Champion Hurdle 14-1, LMA 14-1, Drytart Diamond 14-1, 16-1 Mrs Milner, and a few others in there as well. Ed, which is your selection?
I think Henry de Bromhead's mare, Tell Me Something Girl. It's a massive price still at double figures. I'm shocked, to be honest with you. I mean, She Wears It Well, the favourite we haven't seen for a year. Last year's winner, Black Tears, I think, is retired. Stormy Island's not good enough. Concertista's gone chasing. Epatante, or I end up in the Champion Hurdle, will not be good enough to retire. You start going through it. Who's going to turn up? You've got Henry de Bromhead on record saying we are working back from the Mares Hurdle with Tell Me Something Girl. She's got the course form in the book. She jumped and travelled and destroyed them in the Mares Novice last year. Stamina won it on the new course of cutting the ground. She powered away from them up the Cheltenham Hill. Her comeback was a little bit underwhelming. I get that. On a comeback at Punchestown over 2-2, but the ground was lively enough. She was giving £10 to her rivals. Henry de Bromhead said, I mean, I'm no paddock judge, but I'm told she was carrying plenty of condition on her seasonal reappearance, and she ran like it. But she made late gains from the back of the last, stayed on in the closing stages. I just think, look, it's all going to be geared around getting her right for the one race. And this is when my eyes light up. I've been backing her from 16-1 down. And Henry de Bromhead, they're going to get her right for the one big race. She's got the Cheltenham Festival form in the book. And as I said, like, I'm more than welcome. I'm open to ideas here. But you start going through the Ante-Post list, and I'm struggling to see anyone in the top 10 in the market who's actually going to line up on the day. And she went off 2-1 favourite, would not shock me. I think you'll see a much fitter version of her next time out. She'll be tuned up. And I think over 2.5 for cutting the ground to serve her nicely. And then she'll go on to the festival. Yeah, she starts favourite for this. And I think she'll go there with a real rock-solid chance of winning.
Yeah, this is another one that the guys at 888 Sport have boosted to match best price in the market as well. So 10-1 previous T's and C's, as I mentioned, do apply here. And Barry, we said before on this show that Henry de Bromhead is a trainer where often they can come on for the run. So that first run, the seasonal reappearance may not be a huge issue for Tell Me Something Girl. But you spent the day at Henry's a couple of months ago, and I know that in a stable full of Cheltenham winning stars, this may not be the most high profile. But did you manage to speak to Henry at all about her and his kind of hopes for her over the course of the season?
Yeah, he obviously was delighted with her last year and is hoping for improvement with her. But I think, as Ed says, if you go on what Ed says, and there's a lot to be taken out of that. We didn't go into any great depth with Henry, but he's very happy with her and has her plans again for the heading back there again in March. But as you said, she will have improved a lot for that first round. Henry's generally do. He left Honeysuckle very short for Tappin's Grace last year. He didn't do that this year, but I'd imagine we'll see improvement from Tell Me Something Girl.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I asked Andy for the pitfalls of Ante-Post betting. I think the keys there, Ed's just plucked out. Find a race where none of the top of the market are going to run, and then the one that you're on is probably the one to be on, and that looks the way to go. On then to the National Hunt Chase is the next one we're going to cover here. Run Wild Fred is 5-1, Statler 6-1, Vanillier 10-1, Ahoy Senor 10-1, the Boss's Oscar 12-1, on the ropes 12-1, Beacon Edge 14-1, 3 under through 5 14-1, 16-1 bar, although Capo Dano is in today. Sea of Blue still a bit of 20s round, but as short as 10-1 in places. And this is another where predicting who will run is tricky enough at this stage. But Barry, you think there's one that provides a bit of value?
Yeah, I think Vanillier, his win in Fairy House, he was good, but or in Punchestown, should I say. For me, he's a horse who's crying out for the trip. He won the Albert Bartlett last year as a novice hurdler, big test of stamina. His jumping is, he's not a flashy jumper, which is what you want for this race. So Ahoy Senor is in here. I can't imagine he'd run here. He's too much pace. He runs with too much enthusiasm. If he was to line up in this race, I don't think he'd get home because he'd be burning up front, winging fences. You need to be a slow burner for me for this race, and that's what Vanillier is. He's a careful jumper. He's measured. He jumps a little bit left as well, which is going to suit him. He has course form. It's all about stamina, and for me, Vanillier is all about stamina. Run Wild Fred, I feel, is better maybe on softer ground. I'd have my doubts about Statler getting the trip. Dropping Vanillier back and trip the 3 mile where I would have thought a High Senior would go, for me, wouldn't be a good move. I think he screams at this race. I think this is the one for him. So if connections are feeling the same, I think for me, he'd be the one to be on.
Vanillier, I said 10-1 best price in the market, but 888 Sport have boosted this one to stand up best price. 11-1 with 888 Sport, the sponsors here, pushing out Barry's selection. Don't take too much offence, Barry. I don't think it's anything personal. I think they are just doing what is best for the listeners and the viewers. On then to the Wednesday, the second day's racing, and you have got a selection for the Ballymore, but it also ties in with the Albert Bartlett. So we're going to come to that later, and we'll go straight into the Champion Chase, where there is very little. Well, there's no tips from you guys, but certainly as a heat, it's pretty interesting. Shishkin 7-4, Energumene 5-2, Grenadine 8-1, Chacun Pour Soi 12-1, Alaho 14-1, Nubanegra 16-1. And Andy, we spoke about this race a couple of weeks ago on the show when we were saying then that Energumene was the value, especially each way. Since then, we've seen Energumene race for the first time in a while and win easily and be clipped into 5-2. Any juice still left in that price of 5-2, do you think?
A lot depends on Shishkin, doesn't it, really? And so it all depends what he does. It's a shame he didn't make the Tingle Creek. That would have really made that race. Not as though it was not a great spectacle, with obviously Grenadine winning for Bryony Frost. Yeah, I mean, Energumene was pretty predictable what he was going to do. He's always going to end up, virtually unbeaten going into the festival like he was last season. And that 5-1 just looked the wrong price, didn't it, in relation to what he was likely to do. And he started off his campaign in the perfect style. He got into a little bit of I'm saying unnecessary joust with Notebook in the early stages. I think Connections and Notebook were trying to take advantage of their fitness edge and get the favourite at it. And in the end, they paid for the ultimate price by dropping away. And it meant as well Energumene's finishing effort wasn't quite as spectacular as it might have been. I think he got softened up first run of the season. His back end sectionals weren't anywhere near as good as Concertiste. I think from sort of like 4 out, the one on the corner, I think there's about a 30 length difference that Concertina ate into the advantage that Energumene and Notebook had already built up over the mare. So it was kind of like two races run back to front. The first part of the race was very much dominated by Energumene and Notebook if you had them on a split screen. And then Concertina caught up and they were virtually dead heated at the line. In fact, they did an identical overall speed figure. So you could pour cold water over it saying, well, you know, a champion chaser only just scrambled home against a novice chase having a first run over fences if you were going to play devil's advocate. But I just think with Energumene, that run is bound to have brought him on. You know, he's going to take in the races that suit his profile, i.e. a Leopardstown. He'll definitely run at the Dublin Racing Festival in February. One would imagine he'll win that because, you know, obviously Chacun Pour Soi probably now he's definitely the second string as far as I could see from Willie Mullins' 2 milers. Yeah, and he's just a very, very good horse. So no reason to desert him now. Whether I'd advise him at 5-2, I haven't tipped him up 5-1. He's open to question, but he certainly looks the right one anyway at this moment in time.
Andy mentioned Chacun Pour Soi there, Ed, and I'm wondering what you make of what do we make now of the Tingle Creek form? You had Grenadine, who drifted like an absolute bad thing all day, went off kind of whatever price and ended up winning by 5.5 lengths. You got the 2 horses in the field that were fancied, you know, Chacun Pour Soi and Nuba Negra both finishing kind of at the bottom of the pack, tailed off. I mean, is there too much noise in that race to really put too much weight in it, or do we think we can now pretty safely see Nuba Negra and Chacun Pour Soi as afterthoughts for this until we see something different on track?
As far as Chacun Pour Soi goes, I'd probably, I mean, it's a touch of the beef or salmons about him in a little bit now. It may be unfair after 2 visits to these shores, but he's run the 2 worst races of his, well, not 2 worst races of his career, but pretty much has run the 2 worst races of his career coming over here. You know, he's rising 10 years of age as well. I couldn't have him on my mind to win a champion chase personally. As for Nuba Negra, he's going straight to the champion chase, funnily enough, and his record fresh is astonishing. So he's got an each way squeak, Nuba Negra, if you see what I'm saying. But look, it's a funny dynamic, this race, isn't it? Because essentially we don't really have any idea how good the top 2 are, which normally when you look through the previous years betting and champion chases, you've kind of got 1 or 2 flag bearers where you can kind of say, well, they're the target we've all got to reach, and can we reach it? Well, I don't have a clue how good Shishkin is outside of Novice company. As we say, in terms of Energumene, we get to really see him put in the heat of the battle against a top-notcher. So that's what makes it so exciting, to be honest with you. And there's so many kind of unknowns. You've got Grenadine, who, of course, I think won it fair and square. Yeah, no really strong view. Again, if it was kind of a tentative one who I think could potentially shorten, it would be the runner-up to the Tingle Creek Hitman, who I thought ran a race full of encouragement as a 5-year-old and made an absolute Horlicks of the second last. If not for that, would have got a lot closer to Grenadine. He's only 5. On official figures, he's improved 20 pounds in just under a year. He's only got to improve about another 7 or 8 on BHA ratings to be kind of in the places for a champion chase, if you like. And given, as I said, he's only 5 and he's trained by a genius, I don't think it's without the realms of possibility. I can imagine him being put away now and going for something like the Game Spirit, running a good race there. They might think he's young and wait for entry with him. But Paul Nicholls, he's a young improver who could kind of start, say, an 8 or 9 to 1 poke on the day. But it's a fascinating race, and I'm on powders dry for now, shall we say.
Barry, if you had to ride one of them, it might be a silly question this given your allegiances, but who would you ride?
It had to be Energumene. I just love him. Yeah, no, I did. And last year in Leopardstown, down the back, he's so much scope, but it happened so easy for him. You know, he was good in Cork, as Andy said. He was taken on early on. He ran 2 races, and I think having his first run, that's a real test for a horse. And his class showed us, and albeit the clock in comparison to Concertina wouldn't excite, but his class got him home well. Where Notebook paid the price for it. I love Energumene. I love the way he jumps. I love the way he attacks. He's just so much class. Shishkin is a gorgeous horse. Raced a little bit behind the bridle. Jumps well, but just wouldn't excite me the same way as Energumene would. But there's no other chaser around at the minute, 2 mile chaser, that would do that. So that, to me, he's just a slight little cut above the rest in that department.
On then from the champion chase to the champion bumper, and the idea of having a bet in the champion bumper in mid-December sends shivers down my spine. But when Andy's tipping a horse up at 7-2 in the champion bumper, it's time to listen, because this thing has obviously done some serious times. And I've given away who it is there. But quick look at the market. American Mike, 7-2. The Big Diane, 10-1. Pink in the Park, 12-1. The Muddle Kingdom, 14s. Gilly Billy, 16s. 20-1 bar. But it's the one at the top of the market that you are excited by, Andy. And I'm assuming that run at Down Royal back at the end of October must have been fairly special.
Yeah, it was. We were all told beforehand that he was one of Gordon Elliott's, if not his best bumper horse for the season. And of course, those colours are synonymous with high-class horses nowadays. And he's already had, I think, several horses win bumpers in those colours subsequently. So he's obviously got a fair guide to what he's got. But this fella, I mean, goodness me, he could have won with Big Daddy on his back at Down Royal. Jamie Codd literally just had to steer him. But he clocked an extraordinary time for a horse who was only in third gear. I mean, he sauntered to the front coming down the hill, and then he just had to be literally nudged out with no more than that. I was hoping that the horse that finished second to him would frank the form. Sorry, the third horse. I think the second hasn't run yet, but the third horse won, and Noel Mead got beat about 15-20 lengths, and he went and won next time out. So that's just the kind of like angle that I like to help me. Give me a bit more confidence that the numbers are correct. I mean, obviously visually he was very good, but when the clock tells you that, he's already run to a grade 1 winning standard. I think, roughly the bumper winner at Cheltenham will run to somewhere around about 66, 67. That's traditionally the par or the average of what the likes, Sir Gerard and Kilcook did last year, and all the sort of previous other winners. They tend not to get anywhere near 70, but roughly between 65, 67, 68, something like that. This fellow already run a 66 on his debut. So he's right up there with the very best we've seen in recent times. He runs, funny enough, this weekend. So we're going to get another chance to have a look at him on, I think it's Saturday at Navan. I'd imagine he'll win that very easily. And then maybe he'll go to the Dublin Racing Festival before going on to Cheltenham. But he's following the same route as Sir Gerard did. He won the same race that Sir Gerard did. And for my money, he looked even better than Sir Gerard. And we know what he did at Cheltenham. So he looks a skimpy price. But I think this fellow will be under 2-1 on the day. So, yeah, he's a standout in that division.
Yeah, before anyone gets too excited about backing him this weekend, 4-11, best price at the moment for that race over at Navan. And Barry, with punters, the bumper, not just the champion bumper, but all bumpers have a perilous reputation. As a jockey, do you think it is often the case that it's not always the best horse in the race that finishes in front? What are the difficulties of getting home in front in a bumper?
Well, the festival bumper is different from anyone because it's so competitive. But Cheltenham being such a tricky track, and people talk about the undulations down the back straight. There's ridges down the back straight that you would not know are there all year until you're on the festival bumper and you're on some big baby and he's hitting them like speed ramps. So it's a very difficult race. Position, also just traffic, everything. There's so many variables involved in the bumper. It was easy for Sir Gerard last year to be able to boss it from the front, dictate it. Rachel was excellent on him, but it's not very often you get that luxury. So it's like that a horse at that age and with the level of inexperience, they can have the race ran by the time they get to the start. So you don't know that for certain. Ideally, a laid back kind of punter is what you want, as in a horse who's going to be relaxed, not fazed by the occasion, but it's hard to pick those out.
Yeah, absolutely is. We'll move on now to what is now called the Turners Novices Chase. Was the Marsh Novices Chase, was the JLT Novices Chase before that. The Turners this year, and Bob Ollinger is the 2-1 favourite ahead of Appreciated at 7-1. My Drogo 8-1, Fernie Hollow 8-1, Brave Man's Game 8-1, Classical Dream 10-1, Galopin de Champ 12-1, 16-1 bar. And Ed, it's over to you for your fancy, your tip in this one.
Yeah, again, we're just looking at horses where I think there's mileage in the price, George. And I'm definitely in the My Drogo camp at 8-1 in terms of I could see him going off a lot shorter. I mean, if you live in the echo chamber that is Twitter, you'll believe. Yeah, you'll believe My Drogo jumped like a snooker table last time out, and Bob Ollinger's the new Arkle. Well, I think there's much closer between the two of them. Perhaps we're being led to believe. Personally, I think I'm watching a different race. I thought My Drogo for his chase debut until the tip up 2 out was by and large excellent. And then last time out, he was long at the ditch and he stood off a long way off on the last. But I much rather have a horse. I mean, I'm interested to get Barry's view on this, being a jockey. I'd much rather have a horse who's got an aptitude for a fence and wants to take off rather than run down the fence, put in a short one. And you're going to lose a lot of momentum. I was interested to Ruby Walsh did a piece on the jumping technique of a horse called Darva Star the other day and showing that how jockey's asking him to stand off and take off, but he puts in the extra stride. And then as a consequence, he doesn't get away from his obstacles quick enough. And whereas my Drogo, I think he's the opposite. He's almost over enthusiastic, but I've got no problem with that. And I think with more experience, they could just curb that enthusiasm. The Scouter team are clearly campaigning him exclusively at Cheltenham to get the match practice in at this venue. You know, he's going to the Dipper Chase on New Year's Day next, over 2.5. And then I imagine he might have one more run or go straight to the festival from there. So I think he's definitely going to be the standout performer in the novice chase ranks on these shores, put it that way. I love Bob Ollinger. I think he's magic. But I was a little bit unconvinced by a few of his skewy jumps last time out. And I think these two will end up clashing over 2.5 in March. But this way, I don't think there's as much between them as we're led to believe. And I think my Drogo's going to make up a pretty useful chaser. I mean, he won head in chest in the end at the weekend, which he was entitled to do purely on form, racing against two mid-130s types. But I always go by the mantra, rightly or wrongly, you can teach a horse to jump, you can't teach a horse to have an engine. I mean, he's got a grade 1 engine, this horse. He's only got to tighten his jumping up a little bit. And I don't think he's got to tighten it up anywhere near as much as everyone seems to be crying their eyes out over. I just think he's been unfairly not personally. I think my Drogo's a serious horse and he'll be bang there come the Turners Chase in March.
8-1, best price at the moment for my Drogo there for the Turners Chase. We'll move on now to the Stayers, and this is interesting because you've all got a tip in the Stayers and you've all tipped different horses. So we're going to go around. You can all stake your claim, starting with Barry through to Andy, and then Ed can bring us up at the rear. The market looks like this. We've got Classical Dream at 5-1, Buzz 6-1. I think we all know who's buzzing about Buzz out of the three of you. Got a little odds checker, Golden Star next to the name as well. That might be a clue. Time Hill 8-1, Flooring Porter 11-1, Roxana 14-1, Envoy Allen 14-1, Galopin de Champ 14-1, Cider Burley, Ronald Pump both 16-1, 20-1 Bar. And Barry, you can lead us with Flooring Porter.
Yes, so Flooring Porter, he was for me, brilliant winner of the Stairs last year. But as a 6-year-old, that was the most impressive part for me. And he showed in Leopardstown prior to Cheltenham, and even showed it at Cheltenham to a degree. He is a lunatic. There's no doubt about that. He's better going left-handed, or has to go left-handed, which he showed in Punchestown afterwards. So that's not an issue for Cheltenham. But what he did in Navan was he jumped brilliantly. He was great. He travelled strongly. He looked like a horse who took a blow. So Danny Mullins was filling him up. And he had a second wind when the horses came around him at the third last. And like a lunatic does, he thought he was, 747 and picked up a straight early and dived into it. I'd forgive him that. And I just think as a 6-year-old last season, turning 7, there's improvement there. I just think he's overpriced for a horse who won the race last year and was a really good winner. I would accept that it is a stronger race this year. Stronger race, it's more competitive. But I think he's possibly a better horse than last year. I can see improvement in him. So I think he's overpriced at 11-1 as being the previous winner.
You won't often get horses 11-1 to go back and repeat the trick of winning a Cheltenham Festival race 2 years in a row when you know that he goes at the track and won't be too phased by the occasion. Andy, Buzz is 6-1. I know you're sitting on tickets a little bit bigger than that 6 is, but he did everything that you hoped a month or so ago, and proving the Buzz hype to be just about right. The Buzz, you could say.
Yeah, it's a case of to infinity and beyond, isn't it, with this fella? For Toy Story fans. He looked the one at the start of the season that could be the joker in the pack in this category. And if you're involved with him, you just hope that he goes and proves it, rather than obviously all the talk and all the hype beforehand. Look, he's got stage 1 out of the way. He proved when he won Ascot that he gets 2.5 really well. It was a well-run 2.5. The time figure was pretty healthy. It was the best on the card. The second and third did nothing wrong for the form. God Your Dreams went on to international, beat Song for Someone. They're no mugs. They're good 150 plus, 155 plus horses over 2 miles. And he made them look quite slow, to be fair. And when he got down to the last, he was still on the bridle. I'm just hoping that he does improve over 3. We haven't got the evidence to say he will, but just looking at him, what he did in the Cesarewitch, the way he was so strong in that back end of that brutally run race, you'd imagine that he'll improve for going beyond 2.5 miles. And obviously, D-Day is Friday, really, to find out whether that is the case. He's running in, as Barry said, a stellar-looking long walk hurdle. I can't remember a race as good as that either for the last sort of 10, 15 years. It's almost, if you put Floyd Porter in there, he's the only one missing, really. Maybe Classical Dream to a point, but we still don't know for certain what his capabilities are, because we've only seen one bit of evidence over 3 miles with him. But this will tell us where we stand. And if Buzz does win, and he's a short price favourite to win that long walk at a track that he loves, then even at 6-1, I think this fellow will be, it'd be 5-2, 3-1 favourite by Saturday. Really excited about him. From an Ante-Post point of view, from everything that I've seen of him, he's the one national hunt horse this season, other than Riviere de Tel, that has really got my juices flowing. I can't wait to see what he does on Saturday.
Yeah, let's have a quick look at the long walk, because Ed, your selection runs as well in the 225 at Ascot on Saturday, where Buzz is the 2-1 favourite ahead of Time Hill 11-4, Ronald Pump 6-1, Champ 15-2, Paisley Park 10-1, Thomas Derby 10-1. On the blind side, 20-1, Lisnagar Oscar 33s and Third Wind 40s. 9 runners as it stands. Ed, you'll be hoping for a big run from your selection, Thomas Derby.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I will. I just think he just gets a little bit overlooked in some of these markets. I thought he won fair and square in the end at Newbury last time out. Gave him all a good thumping by the end. The tongue tie. It's interesting to listen to Ollie Murphy saying he's a horse who's left them scratching their heads on quite a few occasions, but they put the tongue tie on him for his final bit of work at home. And it was like a new horse. He absolutely took off. And they thought, well, we got to go with him, because he's always had this little bit of a funny head carriage. Well, they sent him to Newbury with a tongue tie on, and his head didn't go in the air after the last like it has done in the past. So he's a horse who's had 2 wind ups, so they can't kind of go down that route anymore. But anyway, whatever reason, he put it all in over 3 miles. He galloped to the line. He's versatile ground wise, and I totally respect both Barry and Andy's views. Floyd Porter's been there and done it. And in regards to Buzz, he's the exciting one. The only thing with Buzz is, at the time of recording, obviously he's never won over 3 miles. Doesn't have any Prestbury Park form in the book either, which is something else to bear in mind, that he could end up going off a very short price for a horse who doesn't have the Cheltenham Festival form in the book, if you like. But this horse, Thomas Derby, he's placed in the Supreme. He's won at Cheltenham on another occasion. Track holes, no fears. I'm just looking for a price I am a bit surprised he's still 25-1. I mean, I don't even think he's got to win at Ascot on Saturday. If he could just end up sides or just behind the likes of Buzz and Time Hill, etc. Ollie Murphy's made no secret of it. The season revolves around the Stayers hurdle. He'll go from here to the Stayers, probably taking in the Cleve hurdle en route. And I just think he's the one at the bigger prices now. Just going through the market, there's loads of the kind of 20-1 pluses, if you like. I'd probably make 2,000-1 in terms. I just don't think they've got a chance. This horse, if he's got 4 legs, will line up on the 17th of March in this race, and I still think there's juice in this price. Put it that way.
25-1, as you say, best price there for Thomas Derby. And the lads at 888 Sport had a look at your 3 selections here. They decided to boost 2 of them, and the good news for Ed is they didn't want to go near boosting Thomas Derby.
Running scared.
Running scared. Buzz, standout best price. Andy selection there, 13-2. They are. Previous T's and C's do apply, and they are happy to match the 11-1 as well, about flooring Porter for the Stayers. On then to the final day, to the Friday Gold Cup day, and the first race we're going to be covering is the Albert Bartlett, where Blazing Carl is the 5-1 favourite after a couple of impressive wins already this season. Hollow Games 8-1, Journey with Me 12-1, Ginto 14s and Kilcroot 14s as well, 20-1 bar. And Andy, I mentioned earlier in the show that you had a fancy for the Ballymore or for the Albert Bartlett. We're not entirely sure which way it'll go, but what do you want is the one that you're interested in, either the 2.5 mile or the 3 mile trip?
Yeah, I really like this fella. He was well backed to win that maiden hurdle at Navan at the start of the month, and for 9/10 of it, he didn't look like justifying favouritism, but from the second last to the winning line, that's where he really did kick in the turbo, and he was very, very strong at the finish. He beat a couple of nice novices, certainly no mugs. The second horse, Harold Hadrad, was well regarded from the kicking stand operation, and he left him for dead, really. He's owned by, I think, is it Sean Mulryan, who won the Ballymore with City Island, was it about 3 years ago?
He owns Ballymore, the business.
He owns Ballymore, yeah, exactly.
And he did, he owned the Who Beat Champ.
That's
City
right.
Island.
That's right, yeah. So
don't remind me.
He's got a wounds there. Yeah, I mean, he's got a bit of previous.
Probably more likely to run in the Ballymore, do we think, again? I mean, that was
more than likely, yeah, more than likely. Given he won over 2.5 miles, I'll just put the caveat in that the Albert Bartlett might be a possibility, because Willie's obviously got an embarrassment of riches in all departments, from sort of 2 miles up to 3, and particularly that 2.5 mile, that sleeping category. He could end up with a couple of possibles come the turn of the year, up towards the Dublin Racing Festival. And imagine this fellow would be targeted at that 2 mile 6 Dublin Racing Festival race that Gallia Pider Mesnil won last year. I think it's 2 mile 6. So you come out of it thinking, oh, is he a 2.5 mile, or does he want 3? So that's why I'm on the fence at the moment. What trip he'll end up going down? He's 25 to 1 at the moment for the Ballymore, and I think he's somewhere in and around the same price for the Albert Bartlett. So you could actually back him for both races at this stage and cover your bets. But on that same card, when he won that maiden hurdle, he was 20 lengths quicker than Ginto, who won the Grade 2 Novices hurdle on the final circuit. His overall time was very healthy. He's better than Ginto's. But like I say, if you put the two races up side by side, he was 20 lengths ahead of Ginto as when he crossed the line, when Ginto was halfway up the running. So he's already beaten a Grade 2 horse on a like for like circuit comparison. So I'm pretty sure he's a Grade 1 horse in the making, and his next run will tell us whether I'm right or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are right, the one he's going to have to beat is Blazing Khaled, who's been very, very impressive so far.
Yeah, it goes against my modus operandi normally, but I just think this horse is again. It's amazing that we build these horses up, they get the business done, they come into near favourite, and then everyone crabs them. But I just really like this horse. I'd love to see this horse over a fence next year. If I can, 888 Sport could dig me out Festival Novices 3 mile novice chase price for the 2023 festival. I like to see it. He's
on the phone for you now.
He's a wonderful. He's unlike myself. He's a wonderful looker in the paddock. It's got to be said. He's a fantastic specimen, and yeah, he's just improved the further he's gone. He went up to Galway over 2-3, really strode out. They brought him over the November meeting to 2-5. And he won well. Then he stepped up to 3 miles. Of course, the Paul Nicholls horse is second, had a big pull at the weights with him. But the further Blazing Cow went, the better he went. I accept it's the kind of same horses he's been beaten. There could be bigger tests ahead. However, he's improving rapidly. His jumping has been his slight Achilles heel. I mean, he made a bad error in that race at Cheltenham last time out. However, I mean, the new course at Cheltenham over 3 miles and hurdles, if you've got a, in inverted commas, iffy jumper, perhaps it's not the worst place in the world to be an iffy jumper, given I think there's 2 flights of hurdles in the last 7 furlongs. It just turns into a battle of wills often, that Albert Bartlett. And look, I mean, he's come there in 2 races now where nothing's really got him off the bridle properly, I think it's fair to say. And I love the fact Charles Burns, he's a shrewdy, who's won this race with Weapons Amnesty and brought Solwyd over. He's brought this horse over early doors to get it there used to the travelling and the experience of the buzz, and get that all-important Cheltenham form into him as well. So Charles Burns, well, gone on record to say he wouldn't want to see him in really deep winter grounds. He's going to put him away now, bring him back for the Dublin Racing Festival, and then head on to the Albert Bartlett. Yes, tougher assignments to wait, but apparently the lads at Time inform me he's only now around £4 below your average Albert Bartlett winner at the festival from this century. So he's kind of only got to improve a few legs to be right up there. I think he's a really exciting type, but I think he sets the standard at the moment. He's the one I wouldn't want to be with anything else, shall we say.
Yeah, 5-1 best price, about blazing cold, top of the market, but justifiably so, as Ed says in the Albert Bartlett. Ed's got one more tip to come in a second, which is in the Mayor's Chase, and that will bring us to a close. But before, of course, we have to talk about the Gold Cup. We can't do a Cheltenham Ante-Post preview ignoring this. And the market looks pretty different to most Gold Cup markets come mid-December, normally pretty open, but the top two from last year head up the market, and they're the only two single-figure price horses, although in reverse order to the way they finished. A Plus Tard 3-1, Manila Indo 5-1, maybe unsurprising given each of their seasonal reappearances. Chantry House is 12-1, Protectorat 20s, Album Photo 20s, Allaho 20s, Galvin 20s, Lost in Translation, Asterion Phalange, and Envoy Allen all 25-1, Delta Work, Frodon, Champ all 33-1, Royal Pagaille 40-1. I mean, it's a bit of a graveyard down there, I guess, of last year's who finished so far behind those front two, Barry. Where do you see the value at this stage? Is it with those top two? Can you see anything challenging those two as it stands?
I don't think there is. Where the value is, I was impressed with Lost in Translation's win in Ascot. And I think he has a squeak in the King George. I thought 2-5 in Ascot is relative to a King George. He was he had a wind up after his King George 2 years ago, and obviously the Tizzler horse were wrong last year, so you can draw a line through a lot of that. But he impressed me on the day in Ascot, and I think he's valuing the King George. And the King George, I think, is going to affect the market because, and I'm interested to hear Andy's take on Manila Indo, because for me, Manila Indo, he thrives on Cheltenham, he thrives on the new course in Cheltenham in particular. So I'm not fully convinced that he's going to have the pace for the King George, albeit connections, they've said in the paper only last week how much they fancy him and all the pace he has, but I'm not fully convinced. I think A Plus Tard, albeit he didn't have to do anything more in Haydock than he did in the Gold Cup, his jumping was better. I got the impression from the Bromhead team, I could say, from the time I was down there, that he's a horse who may have just improved a little bit over the summer. I think physically he might be a stronger horse. I would have thought Manila Indo had the edge in him last year on the slower ground. So better ground for me would come in A Plus Tard's favour. The softer ground would work for Manila Indo. But I think there could be value in Manila Indo if the King George doesn't work out for him. And I'd be interested to get Andy's take on his chances in the King George.
Andy?
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree with Barry. I think tight track around Kempton might just find him out. He was always at the pin of his collar, as Ruby Walsh likes to say now. In the down raw race, he might have been a little bit rusty, but ultimately, just a couple of pacey horses on the day, Frodon and Galvin, got the better of him. I've been in this movie with Manila Indo before, though. Once I've written him off, but you just have to bear in mind what Barry says. He always comes alive at March in Cheltenham. I almost written him off last season, even though I'd backed him for the Gold Cup Ante-Post. I went into last year's Gold Cup with not a great deal of confidence attached to it because I thought his run at Leopardstown a couple of times was just well below par. But he just comes, like I say, he just comes alive. I was going to say by the atmosphere. There wasn't anyone there last year, so it wasn't, that was an excuse. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, the Albert Bartlett, he was brilliant that day when he was choke out all the way, and he still won. He should have won the RSA, shouldn't he? Really, just Champ was brilliant on the day, and he rooted the last. But
I mean, your audience.
Well, to be fair, that race has stood the test. Allaho, Manila Indo, Champ. Three, absolutely world-class horses. And it'd be intriguing to see how he does get on around Kempton. I probably wouldn't back him around Kempton. I wouldn't have enough confidence with him being a pacey. Although I do think you need a little bit of everything to win at Kempton. I don't think it's all about speed. I think you have to stay as well there. But at the very moment in time, I think he's the champion. I think we'll see a lot better performances further down the line this season as the season warms up. And at 5-1, I think he's still the one they've all got to beat. Even though a Plus Tard, he's obviously getting closer based on his Betfair Chase win when he was just a Rolls Royce that day. I just think Cheltenham a couple of times he hasn't jumped as well in the last 2 years. The Ryanair and even in the Gold Cup, little fiddling mistakes here and everywhere. I think that's just down to his size. I don't think he's as scopy as Manila Indo, but his engine, well, nobody can fault that.
Ed, how do you see the Gold Cup as it stands at the moment?
Yeah, I think we got the right two at the top of the market. I'm almost of the angle. I wouldn't be shocked if Manila Indo got thumped in the King George, and then I go and back him for the Gold Cup. Because as Henry de Bromhead says, the horse grows another leg at Prestbury Park, and he just as you say, 3.25 miles on a new course on soft ground is a world of difference from 3 miles around Kempton with the word good somewhere in the going description, if you see what I'm saying. So I think they're the right two. I mean, the jokers in the pack, if you like, in terms of we don't really know anything in terms of their ceiling and their abilities. Chantry House, who obviously won the Marsh, then won an absolute farcical race and long contest basically at Sandown by a distance, and goes into the King George. Funny enough, I think 3 miles at Kempton would suit him better than it would suit Manila Indo. Whether he's got the class to win the King George or not, I don't really know. But he's still there's a big question mark about him as to where he is. We don't really know his ability, if you see what I'm saying. And the other one is Protectorat, who absolutely thumped the field in the Many Clouds chase at Aintree. Yes, the race fell apart, and Native River's 17 years of age or whatever in behind. But I mean, what I was quite impressed with, the fact the horse pulled Bridget Andrews' arms out for about 1.5 miles. And I thought in that ground, he would just fall in a hole, no matter what you said of the other horses, yet came home head in chest by 20 plus lengths. That was a seriously impressive performance. He's on the cusp of kind of Gold Cup class on the back of that. If you look at the official figures now, it sounds like they might go to either the Cotswold or the Denman Chase, where you'll probably bump into, there'll be a step up in class again. They'll bump into something with, you think, viable kind of Gold Cup each way credentials. But they're the kind of the two unknowns, if you like, where we do not know how good they are over 3 miles. We have limited evidence to back it up. But I think the right two are at the head of the market. And yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if Manila Indo underperformed at Kempton and then became a very backable price with the Gold Cup in mind.
Right, last race we're going to cover here, and of course it is the big one. People might think it is the Gold Cup is the one that we wait around, but everyone sticks around, of course, for the Mares Chase. No, I wasn't already on the train back in 2020 when the Mares Chase happened. But let's start here with Concertista, who's the 4-1 favourite ahead of LMA at 7-1. Riviere de Tel, we've mentioned earlier, 8-1. Put the Kettle on 8-1. Silver Forever 10-1, Mount Ida 12-1, Gin on Lime 14-1, the Glancing Queen 14-1, and let's go with Gin on Lime. Ed, a few people will be in the Arkle Bar at this time having a gin on lime, but you'll be out there booting this one home.
Yeah, I'll be on the diet lemonades or the tap waters if all things have gone pear-shaped by then. But yeah, again, it's a similar angle with these mares races. They're quite murky in terms of their Ante-Post shake-up, and if you just start going through it. You know, LMA ran deplorably at Aintree. Last year's winner, Cole Reeves, retired. Riviere de Tel, I'll be shocked if they went this route with that individual. I think Gordon Elliott even kind of touched upon that. You know, the Arkle at the moment is where we're working towards. Put the Kettle on as your reigning champion chaser. I can't imagine she's really going to come up here. I mean, I know Henry de Bromhead's mentioned perhaps the Ryanair will come into the equation again. So it's a similar kind of principle. You start going through it. Henry de Bromhead, he hasn't sponsored me, by the way. I'm not sponsoring him to keep bringing his name up in every conversation, but Gin Online, 14-1 or thereabouts to win the Mares Chase. She obviously came over here to have a look at the course in that 2-runner race with My Drogo and all the carnage and everything. She's got a lot of experience under her belt. You know, she's had 8 chase starts. There's a chance that a few of these in here, especially if a couple of novices take their go, and they're only going to have had 2 or 3 by the time race day comes along. And I think that will hold her in good stead. She wants decent ground. She's going to be put away for the winter now, and I imagine she'll come back in the spring and have a prep run and then come here. I just see a lot of mileage in her price in a race, which, again, similar to the Mares Hurdle, I think could cut up drastically. And just the final point on this is a horse we touched upon earlier. Concertista is a horse. I've said it funny enough on last year's show. I'm adamant she'd be better off in a strongly run 2 miles. I'd actually rather see her go the Arkle route with the mare's allowance. She's capable of moments of brilliance, but she's been beaten as an odds-on favourite 3 times in her short career out of 9 starts. You know, she does have this propensity just to throw in the towel. You know, maybe that's a bit harsh, but she can come unstuck, shall we say. And I think people get a little bit carried away and perhaps overrate her in the context of some of these races. And given that the times back up how quick she was earlier from her chase debut, I'd love to see her in a strongly run 2 miles, just bowled along in the Arkle from the front, if you see what I'm saying. I'd be more inclined to go that route. And it's interesting that they may weigh it up. And of course, if she came out of the equation for this, then this race would collapse even more. So again, I just think it's a race full of all sorts of muddied waters. You've got a horse at double figure prices. She's got some Cheltenham experience. She's being trained for the race. And again, if she starts at least half the price on the day, would not shock me in the slightest.
Gin Online there, 14-1. And of course, the joke is on me because whilst I was mocking the race about it being on the train back in 2020, of course, the race didn't exist back in 2020. And I, like everybody else, was sitting on the sofa in 2021, booting supposed good thing Ellie May home as she was beaten by Colreevy. So not a race that I have fond memories of either way. Before we let you guys go, just going to ask each of you for your nap, your best selection of those that you've chosen. Andy, we'll come to you first.
Oh God, I don't want to put the mockers on yourself and Barry, but yeah, I think Constitution Hill's a real deal. He's the best novice I've seen for a long time, so hopefully he continues on that upward trajectory.
Ed?
Tell Me Something Girl for the mares. If you can get a double figure price about her, I think that's outstanding value.
Barry?
I would say Vinilier in the national chase, but delighted to hear Andy's selection.
Aren't we all? Fingers crossed it'll be the same in that fantastic Tuesday in March, full of hope. Thank you very much to Ed Quigley and for Andy Holding for joining us today, and of course 888 Sport ambassador Barry Geraghty too. And thank you to 888 Sport for sponsoring the podcast. As I mentioned, those 5 horses all being boosted with 888, so do go onto the site under 888 specials, 888 Sport specials, and you can find those boosts there. T's and C's to apply. 18 plus only. Max stake of £20, and please do gamble responsibly. Please also do download the oddschecker app for all the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, place terms, and Andy's tips straight to the app every single morning of racing. Hopefully in this slightly worrying time, dreaming ahead of better times at Cheltenham in a few months, have put a smile on your face and hopefully given some value as well. Hopefully you have a fantastic run up to Christmas, and please ensure you enjoy the racing this weekend. And do, as I say, please gamble responsibly.